Welcome back to another edition of the Friday Golf Podcast. I'm your host, Andy Johnson. Today, I'm super excited. I am joined by Friday Golf's Kevin Van Valkenburg and Joseph LaMagna. We are doing our monthly check-in where we will just kind of bat around a bunch of topics on pro golf. We recorded this on Friday of last week, and now we are 2 for 2 in 2026 of having pre-recorded deep discussions about Chris Gotterup and Chris Gotterup then going on to win. So just so you know, these conversations, it was kind of an in-depth conversation about how Gotterup did happen before he won this week, which probably only adds fuel to the fire of what we were talking about with Chris Gotterup, who is now the 5th ranked player in the world of golf, which is pretty wild. Crazy ascension over the last 18 months for Gotterup. Obviously, a ton of talent. So before we get to that, today's podcast is brought to you by our friends over at Golf Genius. They are who we use for our event series. It is a software that's made our lives as people who run events all over the country all year long much easier. It's golf's most powerful and trusted on-course GPS, scoring, statistics, and auto shot tracking. They have more than 5 million active users. They are just constantly adding features and bells and whistles beyond just the typical scoring. So they provide real-time GPS distances for more than 47,000 courses. They track accurate distances per club, provide automated stats, and let you review your track shots post-round and see your strokes gained analysis. So check out the free edition of Golf Genius in the Apple Store or Google Play and upgrade for all the unique, powerful features of Golf Shot Pro. Thanks to our friends at Golf Genius. As always, we love partnering with them, and they have some awesome kind of more golfer-facing tools now than just the stuff that we use for our events. All right, check them out at Golf Genius. All right, let's get to Kevin and Joseph. All right, Joseph, Kevin, excited to gather here in February. We've got a fun theme. I wanted to get out ahead of this. I always, I like the block of being the first podcast to do way too early Masters storylines.
Hell yeah.
I wanted to do this. The way I kind of viewed this is in a vein of like, what am I watching the next couple weeks? We've got kind of a murderer's row of events coming up with Pebble and Riv, and then you go down to Florida and you're in the heat of Masters prep. So I wanted to kind of get this on the blocks, and obviously you have players. I guess one thing I didn't know that we were going to talk about until yesterday is the Masters the second major now, because the PGA Tour says it is. And do you guys have any takes on the PGA Tour's new marketing slogan? That this is major for the players.
I saw where Shane Ryan reached out to the PGA Tour and was like, "Hey guys, like, what's going on here? Like, what are you hinting at?" And their response was basically like, "Oh, people have always thought it was like really a major competition, so we'll let the masses decide what they think or whatnot." So just that kind of cutesy wink thing I find. Listen, I've been on this block for a long time. The majors are a made up designation. Like there is no since there's no governing body in sports, you can't really like have someone decide what is or isn't a major. Essentially, what got decided as being what is or isn't a major was decided by Arnold Palmer and a bunch of media people that Arnold Palmer was friendly with, namely like the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette sports editor. Paper doesn't even exist anymore, unfortunately. So it's like, it's silly to me to be like, how dare you speak on this as a major, Andy? I know you're on the Western Am was always, or the Western Open was always a major.
Open. Yeah.
Walter Hagen won 5 of those. So it's not like, that what has and has been a major hasn't been malleable throughout history. So I guess like what I think the PGA Tour needs to do is just put together another blog cabin and wine and dine us and us media types and make us decide what is or isn't a major.
Kevin, I understand that the definition is malleable and has been. We need to hold the line. This is not a major. Live golfers aren't even allowed to play in it. This is not a major championship. And I think my biggest issue with trying to do it, if people seriously want to try to do it, is that you can't then retroactively give people majors when they were playing back nines, not knowing it was a major and the pressure that's involved in trying to win a major. I understand that's been done before, but we cannot let it happen, and we need to hold the line. 4 is also just a good number. We do not need a 5th.
In
4
all
is the
seriousness,
perfect number.
I'm in total agreement, Joseph. There is no other need for majors. Sorry, PGA Tour, you missed out. Like, you never should have let the PGA of America break off. You never should have broke off. You made a decision. Now own that forever.
Hold the line.
I mean, but then Don Rea would be the president of the PGA Tour right now. I agree. I agree with the premise. I think the hardest part about winning a major is the back nine, and no back nine represents that more than Augusta National, where people just like collapse, or people just can't get out of the blocks because the pressure and the expectations and the anticipation. I think there's something about beyond the players, whether they deserve to be a major or not. You don't just get to announce that you are the first major too. Like, there's something about the order, and there is something extra about the Masters because they're the first major from the Open, or what used to be the PGA in August. That 8-month wait actually adds to the pressure on the first tee of the Masters because somebody hasn't felt that major feel in 8 months. That adds to the layers of the Masters. And that's another reason why the players can't just be a major. Interestingly enough, I think something that comes to light with the PGA, and I didn't expect to get here in this podcast, with the PGA moving on to a new CEO, Terry Clark is hired. And while the PGA Tour is kind of, really heavily throwing around the scarcity schedule. And from things that I've gathered, the schedule would yield potentially a early August finish with a singular finishing event, no playoffs. All of a sudden, this opens the door wide back open for the PGA Championship to move back to August. It is actually, of the rotating venues, when you look at the American rotating venues, it's the one that has the most free dates versus the U.S. Open, which is kind of locked in till 2050 on where it's going. And that would open the door to, I think, like, they've been kind of picking through scraps of venues that work for them in May. That would open the door for a lot of really interesting venues. And if the tour ended their season, it's like a final event, and then you have a major after that. I think that's actually kind of compelling for golf.
I agree.
I guess one question on that would be, maybe this shouldn't be the end all be all, but like PGA Frisco, August at PGA Frisco is not a good time to host that tournament. And maybe that means that PGA Frisco isn't a heavily featured golf course in the PGA Championship future venue list, which would be totally fine with me. But that would seem like kind of a big issue that they were so committed to that facility. And I thought that was a big part of their future plans. Like, so you're going to try to host a tournament in Dallas in August? Like, that would not go well.
What if PGA Frisco becomes the Neom of the PGA of America? Just a sunk cost. You tried it, didn't work. Now you just need to walk away from it. The embarrassment is what it is. Like, it just didn't work.
I believe there's only one PGA Championship awarded to Frisco, and it is next year.
Okay, some writing on the wall.
It could be a solvable situation. It's, I think there is in terms of some wisdom that Seth Waugh bestowed on the general golf public when he was the CEO of the PGA. He described the process of locking in dates into the 2050s as, quote unquote, irresponsible. And this is, if they were to potentially move back to August, or consider it, the fact that they have a free schedule is very compelling. And just, to give listeners an idea, we just hosted at Quail Hollow. We had Valhalla the year before. Venues that are all of a sudden open for the PGA if they go back to August. Chambers Bay. I think a primetime August event at Chambers Bay where you're deciding a champion and watching pivotal weekend rounds at 9 p.m. Eastern would be very popular in a dead zone of sports. You also open up, the renovated Medina 3, which we will see this year at the President's Cup. I think it's going to be one of the more compelling PGA or championship golf courses of the next 30 years. There's no real space for it for a U.S. Open. It's a huge media market, Chicago. Obviously, then you get the likes of Erin Hills and Whistling Straits. Furthermore, like when you think about sheer population density, the number of people within 4 to 5 hours of those places that can attend, and what a great time to host in that area. So I think that is a fascinating topic of discussion for the PGA. And while we're talking about, this is all done by the PGA Tour's, marketing campaign. But I didn't really expect this year to be a year where you have these huge underlying stories that are happening in the background of the golf that aren't, really around live. It's more around what does the PGA Tour look like moving forward? Because I think everybody expects to see wholesale changes. And then how does everything fall around that? And I think the PGA, with their new CEO of Terry Clark, is kind of a linchpin here.
The other part of all that I don't know that really got brought up, somebody can check me on this, but the college football schedule just also got altered for next year. And I believe now the final is ending the weekend before the Super Bowl. So if the PGA Tour was thinking about still, because people have said that the Tory week this week still would have worked the week before the Super Bowl. But now if that would be possibly competing with college football, the college football final, I wouldn't think that's something that Brian Rolapp would want to steer into. So that would maybe be further ammo for starting the season after the Super Bowl. I don't know. But I thought that was probably a relevant announcement with the college football final getting. I don't know, Kevin, if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I just wonder so much how much of a winning strategy is to just be like, oh, we're so worried about football. Like, we got to keep away from football. Like, I kind of feel like differentiate your product, make it, maybe so it's not specifically lined up in terms of the exact same broadcast window, but, sometimes golf can be a good, entree to the actual football, like later in the afternoon or evening, like maybe just find ways to not go directly up against it, but don't be so scared of it that you're going to alter your entire schedule just to avoid it. I just say, Andy, Chambers Bay was number one on my draft picks of PGA venues that I would like to see return. I feel like it got a raw deal, and I just really want to see something come back there because I think it's a cool venue for pros.
Yeah, you just think about what they can do in August, and it would be incredible. And it's just, there's some venues, and listen, like they almost need to lean in that, hey, we aren't the USGA. We know we're not the USGA. We aren't going to get the top flight, but are there other venues that make a ton of sense for us to go to because of markets? And one that just got discarded with, no second chance is Chambers Bay. And, I think they're super thirsty for pro golf, high level pro golf. And, what a great, kind of television product when you think about it. It's waterfront, late broadcast window golf. Like that is a great combination. Let's get to the way too early Masters storylines. As I said, I think this is a way to kind of a way you can kind of view a lens. I think like if you think about other sports, like you're constantly talking about regular season and does this work for the postseason, or is this a recipe that can get you to the Super Bowl? It's always viewed through the lens of majors, and with the Masters less than 2 months away, this is a time to start to think about stuff. And I'm curious, what are some storylines? Joseph, why don't you lead us off?
I mean, yeah, it's fun to zag a little bit, but I think we have to start with Scotty Scheffler.
I didn't even put him down because I knew I didn't need to list him.
Yeah, it's more fun to start with somebody a little more off the board, which I'm sure we'll get to. But the more I think about it, I think Scotty Scheffler finishes his career with at least 4 Masters. Like, I think a 5th is very in range. He has completely dominated. It's a golf course that is so perfectly well suited for him. And I don't know, I've been thinking a little bit about the combination. Everyone talks about like iron play and short game and a little power. Yeah, we know that. I think the ability to control your driver the way Scotty does and hit really high ball flight, pure iron shots is a combination that not that many golfers have. Like, I think a lot of guys can hit the really high iron shots, but then they're not always the most in control of their golf ball off the tee. It is such a rare combination to have both of those things that, like, I think Rory's a great example where when he's driving it well, like, we know he can win the Masters, but obviously the driver can get a little bit away from him. And so he has that high towering ball flight, but sometimes it gets a little bit out of control. Scotty has just this unique combination of having both those skills plus a world-class short game. He's going to be one of the strongest favorites we've had at a Masters in a long time. And yeah, I don't think anybody should be anywhere close to Scotty right now, despite a bad round. We're recording this during the Waste Management. I don't think that bad round he played meant a whole lot. He's like, it's not going to be 50-50, but I think there's a very good chance Scotty Scheffler is winning his 3rd Masters in April.
I think I might go over Joseph even on 5 jackets. Like, I think he's 30. Like,
it's crazy.
He's got, probably 12 more years, 13 more years of legitimate Masters like contention where he would be among the favorites, if not the favorite. It'd be the favorite probably for the next 5 to 6 years, barring any kind of injury. And no course is set up better for him, just in terms of great iron play, great short game to recover. Putting is kind of, minimized, but even still, like, he's a very good putter now. So yeah, I think we could be looking at, like, it's probably like Nicklaus's record of 18 is out of like range, but I think 6 Masters, yeah, maybe that's with more realistic than you'd think.
Yeah, I mean, you think about like the crop of real challengers right now. It's kind of weak. I think like there is like a world where Scotty's kind of like choked some players out, and he's had this this effect and impact on golf where people have seismically tried to chase things to improve because of the bar that Scotty has set, and maybe has had some negative impacts. I'll jump in here. One of my big stories I'm kind of watching right now, I'm going to just call them the down bad group. Players with very lofty expectations from the general public, media, peers, themselves, who are not performing at the level that we would expect at this point in their career. I have in this group Ludvig, who's taken a clear step back, and it's very early. So, my kind of framing of this is like, which ones of these guys are going to show life so that they can be a first page Masters betting favorite in the sense of a real challenger. And all of these players, I think, need a kind of like a seismic directional shift from what we've seen to feel that way. So I've got Ludvig, who's obviously contended the 2 Masters he's played in, real contention. Xander Schauffele, Colin Morikawa, who is a ace at Augusta National, tremendous track record, but also is playing, I would say the worst golf of his career. Victor Hovland and Jordan Spieth. Which one of these players is going to flash and show some sort of life? And I think I put Spieth kind of on the very end of this list. I threw him on here because
generous.
Joseph's face when he thought you were going to say
so
Spieth was going to flash.
I just threw him on here. The track record at Augusta is good, even with recent bad things. But if Jordan Spieth plays moderately good golf, you're going to start to hear the Augusta things, and he's shown he can compete even when he's playing poorly. Okay?
Come on, Joseph. He's shown he can compete at Augusta. There's been a couple
there's so
missteps,
many.
but
There's probably
even
20.
playing bad golf last year. He was top 15.
Okay, talking about winning, I think there's probably 20 names that are winning this thing before Jordan Spieth. But go on.
But anyways, so I this is that down bad group, but it ties to Scotty, where you look at the OWGR or you look at Data Golf or wherever you want to get your news and your rankings from. I know our live listenership would probably has some other form of ranking service they want us to look at, but you look at the contenders, in terms of who's playing the best golf, and with Xander being on this list, Xander's playing right now, and I don't, he's playing as if he's the 45th best player in the world.
He looks bad.
He is what?
He looks bad right now.
And you start to look at the list, and it's okay, so there's Rory, obviously, but then it's 45-year-old Justin Rose. There's Tommy Fleetwood, Major List Tommy Fleetwood, Russell Henley, who's not going to win the Masters. I'm just going to put that out there. He's not going to win the Masters. Bob McIntyre, nice player. JJ Spawn, Ben Griffin, who's never played a Masters. Justin Thomas is obviously hurt. Then you get to Harris English, Sepp Straka, Alex Noren. The next person who I'm intrigued by and I would say is an intriguing player to watch right now is Hideki Matsuyama. But you start to look at this list, and one of the things that Scotty's done is that 3 years ago, you look at the top 10 in the world and you're like, this is stacked. What a great time to be a golf fan. What sublime young talents are in the sport. And right now you look at it, and I don't know if this is directly tied, but it seems to me that while Scotty's ascended, there have been some players that have flat out self-destructed.
Do you think the two are related, or do you think that it is actually?
I think they are related.
You hinted at that, and I would be interested to unpack that a little bit more. Look, the one conversation that I think would lend evidence to that, what I would point to is Morikawa just being completely baffled, not last year's Masters, but the year before, about hey, I've got to hit 5-iron into the fifth hole. He's hitting 8-iron. That's just an impossible ask for me. And, did Morikawa, has he been trying to sort of gain a little distance a little bit? And that's why the short game looks horrendous right now, is he's just kind of neglected that or lost the plot with that. I don't know. I would be interested to see if you guys think how closely tied together those Scotty's ascendance is with the regression.
I think it absolutely is, because what is, the interesting aspect of Scotty's process and persona is it's just business as usual. We have a saying that's becoming prolific within our company of run the damn ball. Scotty's process is run the damn ball personified. He just wakes up and he says, we're going to halfback dive. And it's I'm going to do my grip work. It's well popularized. We've talked about this on this pod a ton. This simple process that he just does over and over and over and over again. And he's just reinforcing his golfer DNA over and over and over and over again. And this golfer DNA has overwhelmed his peers, overwhelmed them. And what I think it's done to them is it has forced them to try and get out of their golfer DNA to reach a level that they aren't at. And that's where you're seeing some of this regression come from. I think Xander's a unique case with this group of there was an injury, but at the time, at the time of the injury, really, you were like, wow, like Xander, Scotty's 1, but Xander is 2. And look at this like skill set that like really is comparable to Scotty in some regards. I think a lot of these other guys, and I mean, Jordan Spieth's like the quintessential of this, like has just basically lost his fingerprint as a golfer over the years. But you look at the other guys with Morikawa, I don't really know what's going on with Ludvig. But Victor is his own kind of basket of trying to search for that dragon, that's going to like trying to slay the dragon constantly in the new one. He got to the top of the game with the FedEx Cup where people are like, this guy might be the best player in the world, but he's still searching for something else. I think that the world golf rankings and what's happened to the top flight, who we believe the top flight contenders, it's just so many have fallen off that it lends me to believe that Scotty has had to do something with it.
What's interesting about that theory, Andy, is that like you look at like Fleetwood and Rose, who've kind of been at maybe raised their level a little bit, is that they were kind of established in who they were before Scotty ever appeared on the scene. Unlike some of the sort of, younger guys who are of his generation, I think you could make a connection of like, hey, those guys kind of knew what their DNA was and they didn't really mess with it just because the next Tiger arrived.
It's actually fascinating, right? You think about like who's raised their profile the most, and it's Russell Henley, Tommy Fleetwood, and Justin Rose, a 45-year-old. Russell Henley's got to be like 38 off the top of my head.
Younger, 36 or 37.
36 or 37. Fleetwood, 36 or 37.
Mm-hmm.
All, and then Bob McIntyre is kind of the outlier here. But it is, I'm fascinated by what Scotty's psychological impact is on golf right now. That might be the most, the most you can't statistically prove what he's doing, but all signs point to he is overwhelming people.
Rory might be the only thing keeping him from going like secretariat at the Belmont. Like if Rory's play falls off, all of a sudden the gap between Scotty and everybody else is going to be so vast. Like I don't know, but people even showing up at majors. So that goes out.
That's where you can get kind of tantalized of Xander 2 years ago, 2024 Xander, because he didn't have Rory pop in the bat, but there's so few guys that mix like what Rory can do to Scotty when you watch them play together is just like, okay, Scotty is unbelievable approaching the green, but Rory's really good when he's on approaching the green, and he's hitting from 25 or 30 yards ahead. Xander reached this apex in 2024 because he wasn't as long as Rory, but he was in the discussion. He's hitting 180s consistently, ball speed numbers, and that he's mixing. I'm also a top 10 iron player in the world with that. I have a great short game and I'm a great putter. Like he's mixing
top 5
that
putter,
bag.
I think that year. Yeah.
If you think about the blueprint for beating Scotty at this point, we've seen ironically like no names beat him, which is very actually Tiger like. Like you think about who won the Houston Open over him a couple of years ago. Jaeger beat him, which is like. But where you've seen, I think, where the blueprint to beating Scotty is you do have to overwhelm him a little bit off the tee. You have to earn your advantage there to get the shorter club to approach with and say, hey, Scotty's unbelievable with an 8-iron in his hand, but I can match that with a wedge in my hand.
You kind of need him to have a bad putting week. Like that is, if he has a good putting week, I don't think anybody else really has a chance of winning this year's Masters. But the overall theory, Andy, is interesting. I do think you have to look at it case by case. Like maybe this will age poorly, and I'm sort of not on an island, but I think the Ludvig is regressing storyline is being way overblown right now. He had a really bad week at Torrey, but the back half of last year, like Ludvig was pretty good. A lot of it was on the DP World Tour, but Ludvig's still 26. And we talk all the time on this podcast about the best players hitting their strides between 27 and 35. Ludvig has now finished in the top 10 of both of the first 2 Masters he's played in, and he's just now hitting that peak where we start to expect more consistent results. So like in Ludvig's case, I actually don't think the wow, he's on the downturn and we're seeing a decline is going to age super well. Like I think 6 months from now, we're going to be having a very different conversation about Ludvig. So Xander, yeah, injury. Like I think it is case by case. And the one other name I don't think you mentioned is Jon Rahm, who I think has a very good chance of winning the Masters outside of Scotty. So is it Scotty's dominance that we've seen a little bit of regression from some of these guys, or is Scotty just so much better than everybody else that it looks like that when these golfers aren't actually getting appreciably worse? Like I think Jon Rahm has gotten a little worse. Xander's definitely gotten a little worse post-injury, but like Kevin's saying, like Tommy Fleetwood's playing the best golf he's ever played. Rory has elevated his level last year. Like I don't know that it's true that everybody's getting dissuaded by what Scotty's doing.
You know, Joseph, your Ludvig point reminds me of something. My football reporting days where I used to cover the Ravens and was write a lot about Joe Flacco. And, you know, there was always a debate about, is Flacco elite? Is Flacco progressing? Whatever. And I remember asking John Harbaugh about something once, and he was like, you know, you guys think of progression as like a chart that like it just kind of goes up like this. But in reality, it's more like a staircase. Like it goes up and then it flattens and it goes up and it flattens and it goes up. So, you know, what our expectations for Ludvig are probably going like that. But the reality is like he took that leap and maybe like we're sort of in one of those brief flat lines where it kind of is going to go up again in a little bit. And look, you're right. Nobody seems like a better course fit for the Masters than him in a lot of ways from early results. So we could see that sort of flip all of a sudden. And it's like, oh, Ludvig's back, when really, you know, we're kind of in one of those little lulls.
And JJ Spawn had a breakout year was he 34 last year? Like we're talking Ludvig's 26. Like I do think there needs to be a little more grace with us getting a little bit reacting super strongly to what we saw in an event in January. Like the whole conversation around the Masters is going to change after the Players, and golfers are going to start to turn it on a little bit. I wonder, Andy, to your theory about like broader themes influencing play, if the new schedule and a little bit more of an off season is going to lead to some slower starts and to us overreacting to some January, February results. Like I think Ludvig could have this thing turned around within 3 weeks and we won't even remember what happened at Torrey Pines.
It's like the trend of players not playing preseason football, and then they come out week 1 and look a little sloppy. And it's like, well, like how much stock do you want to put into week 1 and week 2?
Yeah, fair analogy.
Kevin, what's kind of your first storyline you want to hit on?
I kind of want to think about like, is Chris Gotterup emerging to be like a great player?
On my list,
I figured you guys might have that on one, but like this is someone who's aggressive, who's just a really good driver, a really good iron player, has a lot of different shots, can shape the ball different ways, you know, and is young enough to where you're like, holy shit, like this might be, you know, the beginning of something really great. And, you know, I think like that Scottish Open win last year was sort of like whoa, like, oh, this is a real player. This isn't just like a fluke here. I mean, this is someone who can play on real golf courses, you know, Renaissance Club notwithstanding, but this is someone who can play in a lot of different weather. And I think he's kind of the player I'm in some ways most interested in this season early on, because like now we're reaching the part of like, okay, like you're going to be in all the majors. Can you contend in one? Like, I don't know if winning one is a realistic thing, but he's good enough to contend.
He was great at Portrush too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Just as like just a side, and I know Scotty had an awful first round, but you know, you talk about ascension and getting the Scottish Open, he stares down Rory in a final round and wins. You know, it's a big time round. Less consequential round, but still, you know, you are kind of a player du jour of the early season. What does that earn you in Scottsdale in the first round? Pairing with Scotty Scheffler, and you go out and beat him by 10. Guy
I think the guy has most importantly, like all these guys have incredible traits, incredible talents. I think the thing that I like about Gotterup the most is the attitude and the effective, I know I belong here and I am this good. There is what I feel like with Gotterup that shines through the most beyond just the power, the sheer traits, is he seems to believe he belongs in any moment that he finds himself on the golf course.
I'm with you. Something I was working on that I'd put out this week was looking at early major success. It was a thing I was focused on within the context of Ludvig, but looking at guys over the past like 15, 16 years who in their first full season of majors, and I just said full season being they played at least 2, because I didn't want these random, like they started as an amateur 3 years before they actually started playing majors. So first season with at least 2 majors, how did guys do? And you go and look at who had early success in majors, and almost all of them have gone on to do something impressive, to win. Like the top 5 names are Will Zalatoris, who then got hurt. So it's a little bit of that's a sad one. Morikawa, who won multiple. Scotty, right? Comes out, has immediate major success. Obviously, we know what Scotty's gone on to do. Jason Day is another person who pops up, goes on to be the world number 1. Last year was Chris Gotterup's first year where he played at least 2, and he had the second best, at least by strokes gain, from a strokes gain standpoint, second best performance of any player last year who played in at least a weekend or 2 weekends, I might have written. But it was Scotty number 1 at 3.5 strokes around, and then it was Chris Gotterup at 2.5 strokes around. Played well at Oakmont, and as you mentioned, Andy, like was involved late at Portrush. So it might be just staring us right in the face that like guys who show this at an early age, especially who have projectable skills with the ball striking. He's a great driver of the golf ball, really good iron player. It kind of gets like, wait, why not Chris Gotterup? Like it might be just be an obvious one that's looking us right in the face that of course he's going to play well in majors this year.
That's kind of how I felt last fall. I feel like, Joseph, we did something on breakout players last fall. And I think I said, like, I think Chris Gotterup ends up being a top 10 player in the world, top 12 player in the world. And I do think that it is staring us right in the face. Like this is a guy that goes anywhere in the game translates. And then he has the mentality, like not scared. I think like listen, like I've, over the years, you get to know guys that have accomplished a lot in the game. And, you resoundingly, like you end up in conversations talking about people that maybe never got to where you thought they would get to or won the things that you thought they would want. And oftentimes what I've found in talking to the best of the best is that their common response is, that guy just doesn't have it. That in the moment you see it on their face. And I think that is like an underrated, it's you can't really synthesize it, but it's so different than all the other sports in a way. Like people like you see this late in an NBA game or a college basketball game where it becomes non-reactionary and guy misses late game free throws and then they're choke artist, right? The thing with golf is like every shot has that period of time and that insurmountable pressure that you feel just gets heavier and heavier the later you go into a tournament. And it is just not getting off the bus on Sunday, right? And you see this happen time and time at some events. And I think Rory probably would talk eloquently about his struggles at Augusta National. And in many years, he didn't. People were like, why can't he get started? Well, it's because you feel this immense pressure that makes it, he talked about this year with like the first tee, like this was the most nervous I've been ever. Like some players in their makeup cannot handle that. And I think that's where you see slow starts to majors. What you highlighted on, Chris Gotterup played last year, his 2 biggest tournaments as a professional in the US Open and the Open Championship. And people will huff and puff about, oh, you guys are, I think he finished T23 or T16 in the US Open, T23.
23, yep.
People are, T23, like you guys are. This is his first major as a pro, I believe. Maybe second.
I think he had started one before. I have it up 1 second.
But anyways, like at a big time,
he's played it was his third. He played in the U.S. Open in 2022, won PGA in 2024, and then this was it was really his first start as being like an established professional.
Yeah.
You come out and I believe he led the field in driving, and and it's just like part of this, like he plays this stretch of golf. I think he has it. Is my greater point.
I guess the question would be the short game, right? Like I don't know that we know. I mean, his short game numbers are actually pretty good. Looking through it now, it's his debut. If you want to nitpick, we do see a little underperformance in players' Masters debut. So like maybe, but to Andy, to your point about not being overwhelmed, I think that could be a mitigating factor there a little bit, that he won't show up and be completely awestruck by everything he's seeing. Like he might just be a gamer and ready to play. So yeah, I think it might be staring us right in the face.
Speaking of people who do not feel like gamers at the moment, Andy, like, would you buy or sell Morikawa going forward in the just idea of like, we're going to see a bounce back? I mean, I don't love the like, he won his 2 majors during COVID. There was no actual pressure. Like, there's still pressure of like, you're coming down the back nine of a major. I think some of that is overblown. But if we are talking about like, do you have it in the moment when you don't have to be reactionary, when you have to think through your shots? Like, is some of that overwhelming Morikawa now to where he's just sort of scrambled on certain things where his limitations are starting to show up more and more?
I think it's a puzzling situation with Collin Morikawa. The clip that obviously went viral early the week of the Phoenix Open with him chipping is alarming. I think chipping, short game struggles for the best players in the world befuddle me completely. I do not understand. Short game, if you want to be a competent short game player, all you need to do is be fundamentally sound and be able to read lies. And I think the crazy thing about Morikawa, and you can just see it clear as day on that chip, is this is a guy that's won 2 majors. He has been routinely one of the 5 best players in the world, and the fundamentals look awful on the chipping. And I think we've seen this, like having a bad short game that you can't trust is a recipe for coming up short in major championships. Because you are eventually going to have to get up and down. You're going to have to save those critical pars. And winning majors is totally about keeping your momentum pointed forward. And oftentimes, the par saves from hairy situations that you get up and down because you can dump it over here, and it might not be the easiest chip, but it's doable, are the things. I mean, that's what makes Scotty magic. Like, you could look at Scotty and his majors, and so often the pivotal moment, and you think about like the obvious one, the clearest day one, was when he chipped in at the Masters on the 3rd hole. But you go to last year at Portrush, there was, in the final round, he's just trying to nail down the door. There were up and downs, that led, that fueled, that kept him out in front. There's always these chip-ins. To me, that's one of the things that goes underrated about Rory McIlroy. If you watch Pinehurst, when he didn't get it done, in the middle part of his final round, there were extraordinary up and downs that kept him in it when he was kind of hairy. So anyways, I think like with Morikawa, I don't know. I kind of thought he was going to rebound this year, but I mean, if you can't figure out, like, I don't understand how you haven't found a coach that can get you fundamentally sound on the short game when your job is to play professional golf.
I just would add, his putting has also been horrendous the last year. And when you're talking about a player who already is a little bit limited speed-wise, he's not like Russell Henley length off the tee, but he's giving up distance to the top guys. and has multiple other holes in his game. The short game you're referencing, Andy, and his putter has been awful since last year. That you have to be incredible. He has to put on like one of the best iron displays to be playing from behind guys. It's just, it feels like there's too much that has to go right for Colin to be a serious contender.
I think we thought, this is a generational iron player. He has the same dispersion with a 6 iron that most people have with a 9 iron, all that talk. Like, yeah, we thought that was going to make him be a contender forever. We just didn't sort of see that these other holes might emerge within his game. But I was wondering kind of at the Ryder Cup, like, is this the last team, like American team, that we see Morikawa make for, ever? Wow. Maybe? Like, yeah, it's kind of harsh to put it that way, but look, we're talking about like a lot of younger guys are going to sort of start to put more pressure on him. And would you right now like take Colin Morikawa over Pearson Coody or Michael Thorbjornsen on the President's Cup? Like, I think that would be an insane sort of decision to do what the Americans have often done, which is like sort of, well, pick the guys who have experience as opposed to like pick the guys who are, like the next coming. And I feel like there's a good chance that the game is sort of starting to slip from Morikawa. Now, look, we could look dumb when he finishes T10 at Augusta, or I could look dumb, but it just doesn't feel like it's trending in the right direction now.
Joseph, I don't know if you've done any data analysis on this, but I'd be, and this is prescient with Brooks right now.
Putting related?
Yeah. I'm just curious if the numbers bear this out, because I think this is just like, if you've been intertwined in the golf in golf, you kind of know this, but I think something we don't put enough credence to is that putting gets just exponentially harder as you age. You don't have the nerves. You don't have you don't have like the naive approach. It's kind of part of golf that gets harder when you enter your 30s and 40s. And I think you see skills deteriorate, and we've seen skills deteriorate historically. Like, it gets harder to be a great putter. And I think a lot of it is like, you lose your innocence, as Padraig Harrington would say. And like, you listen to Rory talk about chasing the feeling when we had him on the shotgun start, where he's like, I was trying to chase that youthful exuberance, like that spirit and that love of the game and that carefree attitude. Do you remember when people putted with the pins in and during COVID and with the rule change, and Adam Scott, got off to a great start. And people asked him like about putting with the pin in, and he's like, it just reminds me of being a kid on the putting green and putting into those the little mini size flags on a putting green. Putting is like so much harder when you get older. You think about more stuff when you get older. You're more aware. And that, with what you said about Colin's putting, also deteriorating, that he was never a natural putter.
My mind's going a lot of directions now. I think, yes, I believe it is borne out that you get worse in putting as you age, but I would think I think most of that happens after the ages that Colin is currently at. Like, I think you're talking about somebody in their late 30s. I also wonder how technique factors into some of this too. And that, is there something technical happening as Colin's trying to work out his ball striking that then like manifests itself in his putting? I don't know. Luke Curtinine had just put out an awesome video about how Justin Rose's full swing impacts his putting and how changing to the claw has taken his putting to a new level. Like, just the interaction between what you're trying to do with your ball striking and how that impacts your putting. I wouldn't be shocked if something's happening like that with Colin. So I don't know, but it doesn't look good right now.
What I always think about is the one exception to that, Andy, is our boy Phil Mickelson, who got like his best putting years were from like 2005 to 2015. That he got to be like a significantly better putter by going to that claw thing or whatever he did than what he was when he was younger. But like, you're right. Arnold Palmer lost it.
I propose a reason?
Sure.
Did Phil get more delusional as he aged? Less self-aware?
You know what? You might be onto something there. just further and further into the realm of fantasy. But you're right. Like the greats are riddled with a lot of guys who just lost it. You know, Tom Watson famously, like, just kind of completely forgot how to putt into his 30s when he was like truly, you know, it could have been one of the all-time greats if he had putted better through his 30s and early 40s. And Palmer kind of lost his putting stroke too. Like there's a lot of stories like that where guys just lost their nerve.
I think the part I would want to really drill into is that losing your innocence and all this mental stuff, which I wouldn't want to dismiss. Like I think could it also be like your vision and like little things that like that can make a big difference. Like you're trying to, fast twitch fibers and stuff. And I love just in general, the topic in golf of, Andy, I know you talk about this a lot. Like one part of your game, you swing a certain way that helps you hit driver, but it makes you struggle with your wedge. Like, is there something that as you age, it is very difficult to cling to good ball striking while also having the steady parts of putting? And I don't know the answer to that, but I think it is true that you get worse.
I think that, this is an underrated part of Scotty's putting transformation, underratedly impressive part of Scotty's putting transformation is that we have seen, once you feel the pressure of the putter as a great ball striker, one of the things is that everybody lives under this warped expectation that they should make more putts than they should. And a lot of those putts live in the world where elite ball strikers hit approach shots too a lot. And they contend a lot. They're on TV a lot. So you notoriously see them missing a lot of putts and a lot of putts that like that. There's like a weight to that. And we saw it. I think like the poster boys for this is Adam Scott and Sergio Garcia, Lee Westwood through the years. Like these are the guys where it's like, God, but they also just put themselves into that zone where you're statistically not supposed to make this putt. But it looks like it's another chance. It's another opportunity in that makeable range. And that's one of the amazing things with the work that Scotty's done with the putter to get it back on the tracks is like, God, he has these putts that are from an expectation standpoint, like the ones that trick your mind and lead to frustration.
I also think, Andy, on top of that, it is harder to make a putt under pressure. And when you're in contention a lot, you're having to putt more under pressure. And I also think this ties into what we saw at the Ryder Cup last year. And people just saying that, wow, Team Europe putt so much better than the US did. Like, I think when you struggle to putt, we do see that more under pressure. And I think that is not just this little myth that's thrown around. You standing over a 9-footer late on Sunday, it is totally different than Sunday morning when you go out T45 and you rock it up to T18. So I think that there's more to it just than the consistently hitting shots on TV. I think there's actually another underlying reason there.
I would point out too, the ones that are blessed, there is something that pressure does that can actually make everything simpler, which is and it goes to what we were talking about with like, some guys have it that just have the knack in the moment in golf. And it's like when the pressure heightens, it actually slows everything down and allows people to get into a tunnel, it's a magical skill. I think there's probably like a lot of former athletes that are listening that probably are nodding their head is like those moments in time when you get there there are some people that are so gifted on the greens. And I'm thinking about like, it's what Cam Young said after the Ryder Cup, Justin Rose started doing Justin Rose things. Like that is someone that seemingly in the moment on the greens, things seem to slow down and he executes and he makes these putts that, you just don't expect to see people repeatedly do in the highest of stakes. So
I would like for that reason, like if I had a wish list for this year, it would be that Bryson would contend with Scotty in a major because Bryson is a really good pressure putter. He's shown it like in majors, like got up and down everywhere in that Pinehurst US Open. And I think that would be fun. Like one of the things that does kind of unnerve Scotty is when putts start, not going in for him. And that's when the emotion that he, took years to kind of overcome and learn to sort of be even keel. Like you can still see it where he's like wanting to snap his wedge over his knee in Phoenix because he's having a crap day. Like if you could get someone who would really put that kind of pressure on Scotty and keep making putts, you could make for a really compelling back nine of a major. And I think we've seen Rory, play great against Bryson. I want to see Bryson play great against Scotty. I want to see Rahm like throw lightning bolts back and forth with Scotty. I think that would be high on my wish list for this year.
Well, Andy started this pod by saying that the premise was things to watch over the first few months in anticipation of the Masters to see who might be a contender or not. I think if we're going to talk about that specific topic, like watching what how his iron play looks at the beginning half of this year leading into the Masters, it's a little harder to see on Live, but that is a huge story. That's what kept him from winning majors last year. His iron play was not good. He was missing left. It happened at Quail Hollow. He overturned some irons. So I do think that's a big storyline, a skill-related storyline to watch this year. Is if Bryson's irons look pretty good going into the Masters, totally changes his outlook as a player versus if we see what we saw last year.
I think Bryson's one of these storylines, as you said, to watch. He's obviously gone from, what's wrong with Bryson at Augusta, the par 67. Us at Fried Egg, we're tracking, Bryson versus legends of the Masters when they're, playing out their final days. Sandy Lyle, like
Larry Mize,
Larry Mize versus Bryson, one of the great tilts of all time. Now it's the last 3 years been pretty good. Last year, he's 54 hole or 56 holes into the Masters, and it all of a sudden looks like he is going to win the tournament. I'm very, very, that is a big storyline for this year is what's the form going in. Obviously there's a lot of, there's always going to be a lot of drama, interest, and, around Bryson. I think that's, whether it's the equipment, right now it's the live contract situation and what he's going to do next year. But playing some quality golf before the Masters, and then I would expect to see him, right there.
Can we talk about somebody else you mentioned that if it isn't story 1A, it certainly should be right there?
It is.
You want to talk putting transformations? Scotty's is the second best of the modern era.
Cam, yeah.
I do think it's worth spending a minute talking about Cameron Young. And I'm not just saying that because that's a long running bit that I've always been very pro Cam Young, but he's going to be thrown around often as somebody who could win the Masters. Like leading into it, I think in all types of gambling previews, you will hear his name consistently. And I think it is absolutely warranted. And what he has done with his putter, I've been watching his Phoenix Open first 2 rounds. He's been in a featured group, and it is unbelievable how different of a putter Cameron Young is now. And that he's not having his best ball striking day. And from 15 feet, 18 feet, like he's consistently making them or at least scaring the hole. So I do think, all jokes aside about it being a bit that in thinking Cameron Young's going to win at some point, he is a really good name to keep an eye on and watch his iron play. Kind of like Bryson's going into this tournament, going into Augusta. He's played the Masters 4 times. First year missed the cut, second 2-year top 10s, and then the last year, his 4th year, was really struggling with his game in the spring and missed the cut. But another person that pops up on that early major success type of leaderboard that I referenced earlier. I mean, Cam Young has had 4 or 5 top 10s in majors already in his career. He is somebody you should keep an eye on. It's not there are a lot of long shots that'll get thrown around, I think, that probably don't have much of a chance of winning. Like, I think Brooks' chance of winning very, very low. Cam Young has a real chance of winning this Masters.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I think him and Gotterup probably stories, young up and comers, how they'll, I don't think, I think Cam Young's probably past the up and comer stage. It's, he's reaching his prime, and where does he get to is a compelling question. I'd like to point out he has a 1% win percentage on the PGA Tour. That being said, if you look at major success rate, like in terms of he's one of the 10, probably the 10 best players in majors over the last 5 years. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, and did a lot of that being a terrible putter, and now he's legitimately a good putter. Like that is he's a totally different player than Liverpool.
You know what I love, Joseph, is I was standing not far away from this when this happened, is at when Brian Harmon won his Open Championship. You know, Cam Young finished, I think, 8th that year. And
Final pairing.
Dylan, what's that?
He was in the final pairing. Sunday did not go well.
Right. And Dylan DeShare kind of grabbed him and was like, hey, you know, what do you feel about this? Like your first top 10 in a major, how you feel? And Cam Young was like, it means nothing. It means absolutely nothing. I am kind of disgusted with the way that it went. And I was just like, man, this is someone who has much higher expectations for himself than I had. I was like, oh, like, didn't, in the final pairing didn't maybe go as what you'd hoped, but you still can build off this first top 10 in a major. No, he was just very deadpan. And I thought, like, man, that kind of shows like he's still really like wanting to figure this out. And I thought that was kind of a cool moment.
I think he's on the list of people who has a little it factor. And we saw that at Bethpage.
I'm going to just throw out, this is my always, I'll always be a defender of this, especially as I enter this bracket of this age group. Can an old sneak out a major? I'm looking at Justin Rose, Sergio Garcia, Adam Scott, and I'm going to throw one more name in the ring this year who has entered this lexicon of great Augusta National players, Jason Day.
How old is Jason Day?
Yeah, he's an old 38. What is
38. 38. He's officially crossed this threshold. Is there a way that one of these guys could just sneak a Masters, steal a Masters? I think like the two tournaments that set up the best for these guys are Augusta and small field, big time course history advantage where you know the course, you understand it, you don't get overwhelmed by the moment, you know where you pick your spots, and the Open Championship. To me, these are kind of the four players where you just want, and Sergio maybe not on everybody's radar, but as a nostalgic youth watching the Tiger Sergio duels and the Sergio always coming up short throughout my lifetime, these are just guys that I want them to get one more. And I would love to see it. I think obviously Justin Rose is going to be on everybody's bingo card. But these other three, can they find something in the next couple of weeks? Jason Day obviously got off to a great start on the year. Can they find something that gives them real hope at the Masters?
No.
No.
I want to be with you, Andy, but I don't see Sergio being able to do it. I mean, obviously Rose, I think that's the best chance of all, right? I think Adam Scott's chance came and went at Oakmont. You really only get one last kind of great ride as a late 40s guy, like you're climbing to contention. That was Adam Scott's, like a very normal round, a even par round wins that major championship for Adam Scott. And it's like such a career validation. I wanted that so bad for him, but I think that came and went. I honestly would say I have more faith in like Dustin Johnson finding something for a weekend at an Open Championship or at a Masters than I do like a Sergio or Adam Scott being able to make putts down the stretch. Like there's still a lot of talent in Dustin Johnson. He's not as long comparatively to the field as he once was, but this is someone who's contended in Open Championships before. Like I could see, Birkdale being an interesting sort of setup for him. And, it's obviously his major, he's not in all the majors that much further going on. So, it probably is like his time might be running out in the sense of other than the Masters where he's going to be in for another, 20 years. But I still like DJ's chances better than Sergio's. I just don't see it happening for Sergio. A lot of stuff had to go right for Sergio to get that one. Talk about someone who maybe didn't have it in those moments in a lot of ways. I just don't see the stars aligning for that again.
I think the unknown with DJ is what does Miguel Tabuna energize him as a player? The addition of Tabuna to the four aces.
Maybe.
Could be. I mean, we've never seen the effect that having Miguel Buena on your team has on a player before.
It's a true unknown.
It's a true who can say situation. No, I think Justin Rose is a legit contender, Andy. I think Adam Scott. I worry that like that's an underrated storyline for the year, not just the Masters. Like, is Adam Scott kind of done? Which would be really sad. But his last year outside of Oakmont was not super promising, and I do worry a little bit that we don't have a lot of time left with Adam Scott.
What's the one thing I don't know if anybody will match is the consecutive majors that Adam Scott's rolling down and anytime soon. What's the emptying out the notebook? Any last thing you guys want to get in here? I think there's one player we haven't talked about.
Good question. Look, I kind of just because I like him so much as a person, I'm really hoping for a Max Homa bounce back a little bit. He's played okay in the first start of the season. I know, Joseph, you're reluctant to see it. Look, he was a top 10 player, a couple years ago. And is he a top 30 player? I think that might be a more realistic ceiling to what it is. He certainly says that he's kind of rebuilt things and feels really good, feels comfortable putting the club in certain positions now that he didn't last year. Like his comeback is, kind of just as interesting, if not more so to me than Spieth. I take away like the, personal sort of love I have for him. I'm not super convinced that this is a realistic thing, but I'm rooting for it. And, maybe having played well at Augusta in the past, like could show some signs there. If he gets in some confidence and builds on that, maybe we're trying in the right direction.
I'll throw out one like real long shot, but I think somebody that is interesting to pay attention to in the early half of the PGA Tour season is Rasmus Nørgaard Peterson, who had a really impressive win in Australia back in the offseason. Not the offseason, but some people I really respect think very highly of his game, and he's another guy that came out to some success last year in majors. He played well at Oakmont. I believe he finished, T12. Really good ball striker, and he's kind of ascending on that similar. He's 26, similar age to Chris Gotterup. I just think he's somebody to keep an eye on as a real long shot. He got in via his win at the Australian Open in December. And yeah, T12 at Oakmont last year, like early major success, pretty big unknown, but there are worse names you could pick. I think he has a better chance of winning than a lot of people that get floated around.
I'll just like a real quick notebook dump, Andy. I'll just throw out, I mentioned Theor Bjornsson and Pearson Coody. Obviously, like they're young, talented people. But Michael Kim, like winning the French Open, is Michael Kim like a top 15 American player? I think you could make the case that he might be. So I don't know, like if we can build a little bit on that, but he played pretty darn well throughout the course of last year. And I think that there's a chance that, again, he's a top 30 player in the world. Is that his ceiling? Maybe, but maybe there's, some times to flash a little bit in there and win a couple of events.
I'm going to address, we haven't talked about Rory McIlroy entering a Masters for the first time without the no Masters win hanging over him. Do we have any sort of thoughts on, is Rory freed up? Is this going to be kind of a celebratory Masters? What do you want to see from Rory the next 8 weeks?
Really good iron play. I think, the putter was amazing. Backs. So, yeah. The putter was incredible last year. It's like one of the most slept on stories of last year that Rory took his putting to just a completely different level. He's always, he's going to have power. We know that. Like, hopefully the driver looks decent, but I don't know. My expectations I don't know what to expect of Rory this year. I think probably why he wasn't one of my top storylines. Like, I could completely see a little bit of a down year, celebratory year. The Champions Dinner is going to be an unbelievable event that people are going to be going nuts about. I can only imagine what that will be like for Rory emotionally right before starting the Masters. I could see a big letdown, but at the same time, like he's the only person that has been doing this consistently for nearly 20 years. And it feels stupid to discount that Rory McIlroy could be in the mix on Sunday. So I think my expectations are kind of low, and I think it's really hard to go through the emotions that he will go through the days leading into the Masters and then turn it on for a player that's been inconsistent at times at Augusta. But I don't want to be too dismissive. I'd say my expectations are fairly low, though.
They always talk about like peaking at the right moments in swimming. Like, oh, I'm tapering. Oh no, I'm peaking. Like, I'd like to see him peak at the right moment. So I don't really care what happens at Pebble. Don't really care what happens at the Players. Already crossed those things off his list last year. It seems like it would be hard emotionally to get up for those things again when you just accomplished them. But I would like him to sort of really dial it in as we kind of glide into the Masters. And if not the Masters, then a little bit beyond, right? Like a major, on adding another major to the total would be, I think, a great year, no matter what happened for Rory, because nothing else is kind of really relevant in terms of how we'll view him historically. So however it goes this year, as long as one of those wins, one of those peaks results in a major, it's a success.
You know, you look at his career, I think you can reliably count on 5 more good years, really good elite years. That would put him at you think about if you get Rory to 40 in relative form, and what I mean by that, top 5 player in the world. You look at a career of a 20-year top 5 in the world career. That's just not going to exist very often in the post Pro V1 460cc driver head era of golf. And if that major total gets to 6, 7, or 8 in that period of time, you're looking at one of the greatest careers of all time. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of retro active look backs of Rory's year last year. There is going to be a lot of, I think the feeling on the grounds of the Masters is going to be very festive because of the last year result. If he's able to compartmentalize and kind of put it in, get into gear and into the tournament again, I'm fascinated about how what we might see. And obviously, having those good memories to go back from, even in a tournament which he won completely in his own way, it's totally unique recipe for winning at Augusta National with large amounts of mental mistakes, but also with some of the most extraordinary shots we've seen under pressure of any player. So I think, listen, I think we need to see a lot of contention. Is the blueprint is last year, a lot of contention leading into the Masters.
Just to your point, Andy, because you mentioned his longevity, I was looking it up as you were saying that. Yeah, if Rory he has finished every year since 2009 with at least one top 10 in a major championship. If he extends that through 2028, he'll be the only player besides Jack Nicklaus to ever do that in the stroke play era. So, I mean, just like a remarkable level of consistency for 20 years to be competitive every year, year in and year out. So, it doesn't seem inconceivable.
I mean, you look at it, it's like, I think it was the Ryder Cup at Whistling Straits. It's like, I don't think he's been outside OWGR top 15 since maybe the ankle injury that he had with the soccer. It's a crazy, crazy career. And I think we're in the kind of the final chapter. And I'm really excited to see, what's written down,
I just looked it up, and I was surprised to see this, but in 2021, he actually dropped to 16th.
That was right around the Ryder Cup, right?
Yeah, following a streak of 11 years inside the top 15.
It's insane.
It's crazy. So that's obviously a big story for the year. Gentlemen, thank you. We had a second segment. We'll just save that for another time. We'll chat soon. Joseph, you've got a lot of stuff coming out down the pipe. Kevin, you will be out on the road at Riviera in the near future. Anything you guys want to plug?
Yeah, just if you're a listener of this podcast, please sign up for the Friday newsletter. I think we're really cooking and humming. Joseph's got great analysis of the tournaments every week, and Brendan and I are sprinkling in things here and there. You got Garrett, got Meg, got Andy occasionally to drop some insights and knowledge. So please, I think we're really we're on the staircase ascension at the of the newsletter. We keep going up.
I think the only other thing that all three of us have been working on, and a couple others, keep your eyes peeled maybe for some anonymous type of feedback we've gotten from some players in the game that may be coming out soon.
Hell yeah.
All right, thank you for listening to another edition of the Friday Golf Podcast. We will be back next week. Obviously, we've got the Pebble Beach and Riviera. We're kind of in the murderer's row here of early season golf. And we will chat with you next week. Big thanks to PJ Clark for putting together this episode.